Mario Kart World really marks a brand new era that we're entering for the Mario Kart series. Making it an open world game, having all of the tracks connected and being able to drive to each one and having it sort of be a world, there's a very good chance that this is the formula that Mario Kart will have for the foreseeable future. And if that's the case, that means that the traditional Mario Kart formula is gonna take a backseat. So today, I wanted to look at each and every Mario Kart game and just kind of talk about them a little bit. This isn't necessarily going to be a crazy in-depth look at each one. I just kind of want to talk about my experience with them and just sort of where they stand, what each one represents for the Mario Kart series moving through the years. So of course, we are going to start at the beginning with Super Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo. So really looking back, this one is definitely the redheaded stepchild, the odd one out of the entire series, and that is because it's the first one. Super Mario Kart wasn't even supposed to be a Mario game from the jump. It was meant to be a two-player racing game that complemented the single-player gameplay of F-Zero, because F-Zero wasn't capable of two-player racing with the speed and the size of the tracks for the Super Nintendo. It wasn't powerful enough. So Mario Kart was originally just meant to be a racing game that was slowed way down for two players to do at the same time, and then eventually the Mario elements started to be thrown into the mix, and we got Super Mario Kart. I haven't played a ton of Super Mario Kart. I've of course visited it in recent years with Switch Online and being able to download it onto modern consoles, and it's just a game that's like, okay, like I can give it its flowers because it's the first one, and you can really tell that this is the first one in the series. There's a lot of little hiccups and little things that you can tell would be changed. I think the biggest is, of course, that the game the entire time has the map at the bottom, even if you're playing in single player, and I think that is certainly a choice, but I think, you know, the way that they designed the game, where it's supposed to be for two players, so something has to occupy that space, I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's just a little strange. It always throws me off going back and having like 50% of the screen real estate be this map that honestly isn't really that helpful because, you know, Mario Kart tracks don't really surprise you with the twists and turns. You know, you can kind of tell what's coming because the game isn't that fast, but I always just get thrown off by the fact that there is like literally only 50% of the game to play at any given moment. It just kind of has that we don't really know what we're doing air about it. And I don't even necessarily mean that as a bad thing. It's just that we can tell that Super Mario Kart is really different from the rest of the series, you know, with the benefit of hindsight. So it's just a very clunky and awkward looking game. Now, it's still Mario Kart, it's still very fun, but there's a lot that you can tell they still didn't master as far as the gameplay goes, and you kind of want to play it for the novelty and then go play a more modern Mario Kart game. The carts control very strangely, and the whole drifting and hopping system really, you know, could have used a little bit more work. But I have to give it its flowers that it is the first one. It's just, you know, it's the one that started it all. And even if it's not all too amazing to go back to, it's, you know, it's the first Mario Kart game, and you have to respect it at least a little bit. Plus, I mean, it's got Donkey Kong Jr. That automatically makes it a good game. They should really bring back Donkey Kong Jr. I was really hoping he would somehow be one of the characters for Booster Course. Anyway, moving on to Mario Kart 64. Now, this is really where you can tell the Mario Kart formula found its footing. They really improved on the controls. They really kind of found what they were going for with Mario Kart. A lot of different things were tweaked. The controls are still not great. Please don't hate me for this, but I've never vibed with the Mario Kart 64 controls going back. You know, you play Mario Kart 8 for a long time, you play even Mario Kart Wii, then you go to Mario Kart 64 and you have to like change something in your brain where you control the kart very differently to have the best gameplay. Mario Kart 64 also introduces a bunch of things that would become staples to the series. So you've got things like mirror mode and 4 players, now that the N64 can handle 4 players. But then you've got a bunch of items that were introduced. You know, you've got the spiny shell and the golden mushroom and the fake item box. It just is, you know, you can just, like I said, tell it's the game where they really understood the assignment, and now they're like, okay, it's Mario Kart. It's not a kart racing game that became Mario Kart. Now we can approach it with Mario Kart lenses from the jump, and you just kind of can tell they knew that the formula worked. It's sort of like the Super Smash Bros. Series. Super Mario Kart and Smash 64, you can tell they were kind of experiments, and they weren't really sure where the series was going to go, or if it was even going to be a success and become a series. You can kind of just see they didn't exactly know what they had their hands on here. But then you move on to Mario Kart 64 and Super Smash Bros. Melee, and now they know, okay, people like this, it really works, let's, give it 110%, and you just get a far more polished product, and I think that it can really be seen here. Despite that, I didn't play a lot of Mario Kart 64. Again, it's another game where I've gone back and played it since, but I didn't have a Nintendo 64 growing up. No one I really was friends with had Mario Kart 64, so my exposure to it was very minimal, and I just haven't, I don't have that experience with it in my childhood to influence it later. So, it's again a fun game. It's Mario Kart 64 to me, but the controls and certain elements where I'm it just doesn't click for me in my brain. And I know that's not popular because Mario Kart 64 is beloved and I like it, but it's not one of my favorites personally. And I think it's just because I grew up with a different Mario Kart, and so that's the one I like. And speaking of games I did not play very much, Mario Kart Super Circuit, I played even less than Mario Kart 64 and Super Mario Kart. I didn't have it. I don't know what to say. I haven't played it a lot. I've played it since, like the other two, but I wasn't really Mario Kart pilled, so to speak, at this point in my life, so I don't have a ton of experience with it. Everyone likes to say it, but the Game Boy Advance was basically a Super Nintendo in your hand and then souped up. So Mario Kart Super Circuit plays a lot like Super Mario Kart with some elements adjusted with Mario Kart 64's development experience in mind. But it does play a lot like Super Mario Kart. And again, it's just not my favorite. However, I do think it's really cool having all of the Nitro tracks and then bringing back all the Super Mario Kart tracks just as a bonus because the game kind of is Super Mario Kart souped up was really cool. And it's kind of the beginning of bringing back retro tracks because they could just do it. It's a lot more formalized this time around, whereas in Super Circuit it was just, hey, you can play the Mario Kart, Super Mario Kart tracks now. This time, as the series would go forward, it would be far more, categorized, and you could tell these were retro tracks, whereas this one was simply, hey, these are all from Super Mario Kart. Please enjoy. But I think this is a really good first handheld Mario Kart, and it's kind of crazy that this is only the third Mario Kart game in the series. It feels like there would be at least one more before it, but, there isn't. So next we have Mario Kart Double Dash, and this is where I really started to play Mario Kart a lot. I played it a ton at a cousin's house, and then when I got my GameCube, I actually remember it was the bundle that came with Double Dash, and I specifically wanted that, both because it was the Platinum one, and because I just loved Mario Kart Double Dash based on what I played, and I love this game. I really wish they would bring back the two-character mechanic, because it was so unique. There were a lot of elements that, you had to consider when picking your two characters. I mean, obviously the weight class was a thing where now you could mix and match and have a light character and a heavy character, for instance. But every character, or every, character class, the ones that were paired together, every duo, that's the word I'm looking for, every duo had a special item. And these special items were exclusive to them and were kind of like super, super crazy items. So you had some basic ones, like just big giant banana for Donkey and Diddy Kong, or fireballs for Mario and Luigi. But then, like, the Bob-Ombs were exclusive to Wario and Waluigi, and the Super Mushroom, previously an item that anyone could get, was now a special item for just Toad and Toadette. I kind of wish they would bring back the special items even with these single racers, because it kind of gives you more to think about when you're picking your character. There might be a character that's objectively faster, but there might be a character that's slower, but has a much better special item that they're more likely to get, and so it makes them a more appealing option. My only complaint with Double Dash is that it does feel a little empty. I mean, as far as the tracks go, because it didn't have the retro tracks that Super Circuit technically introduced. It only had the 4 cups, Mushroom, Flower, Star, and Special, and then the All Cup where you could play them all. It wouldn't be until the next game we're about to talk about where Retro Cups would be introduced formally and then be a staple of the series moving forward. But despite that, I love Double Dash, man. I understand it is fully nostalgia. Some people do not like this game, but this was my Mario Kart game. This is the one that I played the most of and had the most fun playing, I think. And I love it. So bring back 2 characters in one, man. Mario Kart DS. This was the first game that I bought as the new Mario Kart game, kind of as it was coming out. I think I probably got it a few months after its release, but that was the closest to getting a game on launch that I had gotten to at that point. So this was, I remember this being a big deal to me. And this game was a big deal because the Nintendo DS supported Wi-Fi connection. I remember desperately wanting to play Mario Kart DS online. I had my DS Lite. I had Mario Kart DS. I brought it home. I went to try online, and my router did not support my Nintendo DS. It was too old, and I could not play it. And I remember being devastated. I mean, I could still play the game, obviously, but I remember wanting to play it online and just not being able to, and that was just so sad to me. I remember around this time going on a vacation and staying at a hotel that had Wi-Fi, and I remember wanting to connect to the hotspot and finally being able to play Mario Kart for the first time online. And it was so laggy, but it was awesome. I mean, that's a formative memory. That whole experience is a formative memory for me as a little kid. Even though I was like 6th grade at that point, so I'm getting out of the little kid territory there, but I remember just that being such a big deal and being so cool. And Mario Kart DS brought a ton of features that kind of just got lost to this single game. The first, of course, is that single player mission mode, which was just really cool. Even if it was just go through the rings or the tires or hit these enemies or whatever, like, it was really cool to do and gave you something to do more than just play a Grand Prix Cup if you were by yourself. And I think that was really cool, and it gave you a bite-sized thing to do on the handheld, because you could start this, stop it, close your DS, put in sleep mode, then you got to go to dinner with your great aunt Sylvia or whatever. They had the little emblem creator where you could draw anything you wanted and have it be what represented you on races. Of course, people drew wieners and were racist or whatever on it. You give people the freedom to do anything and they're just going to be messed up on it. But it was just so cool that was a feature. I totally get why it hasn't come back. I respect that decision, but it was just a little cool moment in the Mario Kart series that we could, make our own little guy. Being able to play local wirelessly was amazing. I remember doing that all the time with kids because you only needed the one cartridge because DS download play was a thing. Everyone had to play as Shy Guys, but that didn't matter. You were playing Mario Kart not connected to a link cable on your Game Boy. It's just so cool. I know I said Double Dash is the one that I had the most time in, but I think Mario Kart DS is kind of the one that I have the most fond memories of because not only was it, like I said, the first game that I was buying kind of into at launch, but it just, it had, I think, the most core memories for me. It was such a time. And I'm personally devastated that Rob has never returned. Rob being in that game was so cool, and I was convinced he was going to be in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's DLC. I was convinced, but no, Nintendo is not my friend today. So next up is Mario Kart Wii, and Mario Kart Wii is kind of the Super Smash Bros. Melee of the Mario Kart series. Melee is considered the most competitive Smash game, and despite new games coming out, people still play Melee. The same is true of Mario Kart Wii. This is considered the most competitive Mario Kart game that has been out there, and despite other games coming out, people going and checking those Mario Kart games out, there's just a huge core audience that keeps going back to Mario Kart Wii. And that status is rightfully deserved. Mario Kart Wii is one of the slickest, the best to control games that the Mario Kart series has seen. All of the other games control very well, but there's just something about Mario Kart Wii where you just felt like you had the most control over your character if you were using, the optimal quote-unquote settings. there was just something about it. There were a ton of mechanics that Mario Kart Wii introduced that, would then move forward in the series. You've got bikes, and in this game, karts versus bikes was like a big distinction. Now they're kind of just all mushed together, and if you want a bike, you kind of just know you're going to control differently, but in this game, they made a big deal to have them in 2 separate columns. There are things like air tricks and slipstreams and, performing wheelies, which I wish kind of came back because you got a nice boost, but you couldn't really turn. There were a lot of different mechanics. And then, of course, you could play on Wi-Fi in this one, too, and that was kind of a better experience because, for some reason, Mario Kart DS just kind of, people would glitch and jump around all over the place when the connection wasn't stable. They did a lot better with Mario Kart Wii's netcode, I think. And it's just, all around a really solid Mario Kart. And, if any of them are the ones that people are playing for another 10 years, I think that Mario Kart Wii is definitely not only going to be the one, but like it makes sense that it's the one people play. And that isn't even getting into the whole modding scene of everything. And then you had the Mario Kart channel with different events that kind of replaced DS's mission mode, which you can play now in a restored mod pack, which I've made a video on this channel. So there's just a ton to say about Mario Kart Wii. I feel like I could sit here for 30 minutes and talk about each little aspect, so I'm going to stop myself right now and move on to Mario Kart 7. So Mario Kart 7's interesting because it's a portable Mario Kart, but it handles, in retrospect, kind of like Mario Kart 8 does. And that puts it in a weird position because in all ways, it's almost outclassed by Mario Kart 8. While all the other handheld ones kind of feel distinct from the console ones, Mario Kart 7 kind of controls basically like Mario Kart 8, and that's a shame because, in my opinion, Mario Kart 7 is the peak of what handheld, specifically designed for handheld, Mario Kart can be. Obviously, we can play Mario Kart on the go now with the Switch and Switch 2, but as far as like this is intended to be a portable Mario Kart, I think it's the best that the series could ever have. The hardware is powerful enough, and with the circle pad, you're now kind of just controlling your game as if it were a console game. Now it's just in handheld. Whereas in previous ones, your ability to control your character felt a little bit neutered simply because you were using kind of inferior hardware. And you were just kind of okay with that because you were like, all right, I'm playing portably. I know it's not going to be like playing with a controller on the TV. But with Mario Kart 7, it really does feel like you are controlling a console Mario Kart on the go. But sadly with that, it means that Mario Kart 8 kind of does everything that Mario Kart 7 does, but on console and better. So it's just, Mario Kart 7 is just in this weird position. But it did introduce a couple of mechanics that we would then see in Mario Kart 8 and beyond, which is the gliding sections and the underwater sections, which really allowed them to design more complex tracks, which I think they probably couldn't have done on a handheld before now. But yeah, Mario Kart 7 is just a fantastic portable Mario Kart game. It's just, like I said, kind of outclassed by the next game, Mario Kart 8. So first off, let's just get it out of the way. Mario Kart 8 is the prettiest Mario Kart that we have had in this lineup so far. And that's thanks to Nintendo finally getting with the times and making an HD console. And, they really, took advantage of it. This game has great lighting and just looks so pretty. So Mario Kart 8, of course, introduced anti-gravity, and this is an interesting concept on paper, but really doesn't change a ton when it actually comes to the player sitting down and experiencing a course. There are times where you will see other racers, or you will be in a different position, as far as gravity is concerned, to other racers, but it doesn't actually do a ton. Like, you can't really interact with those players a lot of the time, and as far as your perspective on whether you are upside down or not, you can't even really tell a lot of the time because the camera stays oriented to keep you upright. So even if you are upside down, you can't really tell during the middle of a race. The most you'd be able to do is tell when you go up on a wall because the game actually, rotates like that. But you can't really tell that you're upside down or doing anything that interesting during the race. It's almost like you need to zoom out to see the whole track and then you can understand, oh, I was upside down in that moment. I didn't even really tell because, you know, like I said, the game keeps the camera oriented to you. This is also the first Mario Kart game that had DLC with the Zelda and the Animal Crossing and the Splatoon sort of collabs, I guess you could say, even though it's all Nintendo. But it was a big deal that, you know, aside from, I guess, Rob, there hasn't really been non-Mario characters in Mario Kart. So it was really cool to see, you know, Link and Villager and, you know, the Inkling. And that was really, I think, when a lot of people started to speculate we're going to get a Super Smash Kart at some point. And we have yet to see that still. And for the record, I don't necessarily want a Super Smash Kart. If they still bring in other franchise characters, that's fine. But, like, make it still be Mario Kart. Like, it's Mario Kart, and then occasionally, like, I don't know, Bayonetta would show up. Oh, this game also introduced 200cc, which just makes the races even faster. And then I may as well talk about Mario Kart 8 Deluxe here, which is just, you know, all of the content from Mario Kart 8, including DLC, bundled into one package for the Switch. And then 100 years later, they decided we're going to double the content of this game and give you like over 100, okay, not over 100, but like close to 100 tracks. And I'm still blown away that they even did that. Like, I know it didn't seem like it was a ton of work because a lot of the stuff they added were just from Mario Kart Tour, but it just was surprising that they even bothered doing that. There's not a lot more to say about 8 Deluxe. They gave you a second item, which kind of changed up gameplay a little bit. But really, the discussion sits in all of the DLC from the booster course, which is just, like, again, I'm still just blown away that we got that. And the final quote-unquote core series Mario Kart game is, of course, Mario Kart Tour. And this is a controversial one, and it's one that I've played on and off, but I don't really know that I am, like, the best person to give like an objective understanding of Mario Kart and give like an opinion on it. Mario Kart Tour is interesting because the gameplay isn't approached in the same way that the other Mario Kart games are. I had a friend who played it, and the way they described it is it's not a racing game, it's loosely a puzzle game disguised as a racing game. Your goal isn't necessarily to get first in the race, which is ironic. Your goal is to get the most points possible, and the way you do that is by doing combos. Now, you do get points for performing better in the race, but you don't necessarily have to get first to be doing fantastic. Every character, kart, and glider have favorite tracks, and you want to use the best ranking one, basically, in order to start with the most points and also increase the amount of time that your combo will sort of stay alive. So it's really not even that much about, I'm going to win, and it's more about what character, what glider, what kart is best for this specific track. And then that is, of course, then influenced by the shop where you can purchase karts, gliders, and characters. And then the whole microtransaction thing takes off. And that's really the core of the game, is to spend money or, you know, do the gacha and get a really good character, a really good kart, whatever. And, yeah, I can see why people don't like it. I've gone through bouts where I've played Mario Kart Tour, but it's always been free to play, so that really, you know, does hinder your ability to do super well if you're not willing to spend the money and originally play the gacha, or then later just straight up buy the character. But it's still like an okay time killer. I think you just have to go into it with the idea that it's not a mobile racing game. It is a mobile gacha puzzle game where you try and increase your combo. It's just in the format of Mario Kart. And I think if you are aware of that, the game becomes a bit more fun, but then also kind of becomes a bit lamer because you kind of just want to play Mario Kart. But the best thing they did was bring back Donkey Kong Jr. So that was every main series Mario Kart game as classified by Nintendo. There are a couple of weird ones. There are the 4 arcade games, which I've made a whole video about on the main Aaronitmar channel. So if you're interested in that, I would definitely recommend checking that out, please. I mean, maybe I'm biased, but you should check it out. And then there's also Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, which was a sort of augmented reality RC racing game. And I didn't play this a ton. I kind of bought it, set it up, played it once, then put it all back in the box and haven't touched it since. It's it's cute, but I would call it more a toy than a game. It doesn't really feel very much like a game, but it is cool to set up your own courses like in your house and see things down there from the Mario perspective. And then it kind of reminds me of the courses that we got in like Mario Kart Tour and Mario Kart 8, like the squeaky clean one. I forget the full name of that, but the one where you're in the bathroom, or there's the one where you are in the kids' room and you're the size of toys. I've always really kind of liked tracks like that in Mario Kart, so this definitely sort of scratches that itch. It's just way more annoying to set up and then have to put it away again and, get yelled at because it's in the middle of the house. But that was every Mario Kart game. With Mario Kart World out now, it does truly feel like we are at the end of an era. And frankly, I kind of get it. It does seem like there weren't a ton of ideas left for just the regular Mario Kart formula, especially with a gorillion tracks in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's Booster Course Pass. It just feels like they've probably exhausted all of their ideas as far as traditional Mario Kart goes, so they went a totally different direction. And, I'm okay with that. I just do think that if this is a success and they have more ideas and they want to, continue in this direction, then all 8, 9, 10, however many technical games there are for Mario Kart, the beginning of the series, if this is now the second half of the Mario Kart series, for example, then we are never really going to see that format again. All I want them to do is bring back Donkey Kong Jr., though. Come on, Mario Kart World. You got a whole world out there. I know there's one Donkey Kong Jr. somewhere.